You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, it's Thursday and another podcast from Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I'm your host, Steve Adams, and in case you didn't know, I'm also known as Mighty Blue, hence the name of the show. This week we've got an AT thru-hiker on the show again, though this isn't the main thrust of our conversation. Steve Barbour is the Executive Director of the Sheltowee Trace Association, and I wanted to chat with him about some interesting things I've been learning about that trail recently. Of course, I also talked with Steve about his AT thru-hike as well. Steve will be on in a moment. Then, in our class of 2022, we have more potential thru-hikers who are heading out this year. Hugh and Kerry Ickrath have a very novel approach to the trail. We're going to be hearing from them a little later. Then, I'm at the end of the book I've been reading now for a couple of months. Well, more than a couple of months, in fact. I've been referring to Winton Porter's book as Passing Through, which I genuinely thought it was. But that's even though I've got a copy of the book and I see it every time I open it on my Kindle. But an email from a listener, Carla Tam, made me smile this week. Carla wrote, "I'm up to date with your show now, and I've noticed that you've been referring to Winton Porter's book title as Passing Through. Just wanted to let you know it's called Just Passing Through. If you wanted to note that on your show in case anyone is looking for the book online and can't find it." Oh dear. She finished, "Thanks again for your show, Steve. I won't be able to binge listen anymore. I have to wait a whole week between episodes. Bummer." Well, I hope this was worth waiting for, Carla. And thanks for getting me to name the title on the last bloody chapter. I'd be dangerous if I had a brain. So let's meet this week's guest. Here is Steve Barbour, or Trail Dust. So today's guest is Steve Barbour, or Trail Dust. Hey, Steve, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for the chance to talk to you.
Well, first off, let's get the Trail Dust out of the way, because I actually didn't have that trail name before. So why are you Trail Dust?
Well, it's something I gained from a friend back when we did the AT hike. I was asked, come up with a name before anybody gave us a name. So I like the trail, and you generate a lot of dust as you're walking along. So it just seemed to fit.
That's fun. So you are Trail Dust. Now, you were suggested to me by a guy named John Park, and it's your work on the Sheltowee Trace Trail that I want to come to a little bit later. But first, let's have a little bit of background. I know you're retired Army. What did you do once you got out of the military?
I spent 5 years working in Washington, D.C. with the Department of Health and Human Services as a media officer. And after 5 years, this was under the George W. Bush first administration. And after 5 years, I went into my boss and said, I've had enough. I need to go hike the Appalachian Trail. And he was all supportive and sorry to see me go. Came to my going away party, made a nice speech. And a few weeks later, I was on the Appalachian Trail. It was middle of the trail season in June. So we started in Harper's Ferry and went north and then came back south.
So why is it, you think? Because a lot of military hike after the service. What is it that you find out there that works for you? And what do you think works for other military?
Well, it just sort of depends on what your career is in the military. I spent 18 years in broadcasting with Armed Forces Radio and Television in Korea and Germany, and I didn't do a lot of hiking in that particular position. But the first 4 years I was in airborne infantry in Fort Bragg, so we did a lot of hiking. We did a lot of walking in the woods. So we meet a lot of people on the Sheltowee who are veterans and have the same experience. They were in the infantry or artillery, the combat arms services, so they spent a lot of time in the field, a lot of time sleeping on the ground. It just seems like it's a natural thing to get back into. And it's just a whole lot easier for those kinds of jobs to acclimate yourself back to sleeping on the ground, carrying a pack, doing all those kinds of things. Not to say that people in the medical business don't do the same thing. It just, the combat arms is more associated with being out there in the field, spending lots of times out in the woods doing those kinds of jobs. So I think that's probably what it is.
Well, funny enough, I spent the weekend in the woods this weekend as well for the first time for some while, and it isn't as easy as I seem to remember it was that first time back. Trying to sleep on a pad in freezing conditions. I found it slightly more uncomfortable than I was expecting, really. So that decision to go and hike the AT, you kind of threw that in there. Where did the AT come from in your mind then? So what got you to want to do the AT?
Well, I lived in Maryland, just south of Baltimore, in the Washington corridor there. So the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club is huge. It's just a part of the conversation up there, a lot more than I think it is here in Kentucky or in the western part of the states. It's there. It's in the conversation. It runs through, Virginia and Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. So there's just a lot of folks in the corridor up there who get out, talk about it, share it on social media, or even before social media, they just talked about it. It's in the Washington Post, it's in the Baltimore Sun. So there's just a lot of publicity about it.
Right. So something you wanted to do, and you said you quit, and you were then on the trail a couple of weeks later. So how did you prepare for it? Did you know? Because if you say I know you've been hiking in the military, it's not the same thing though, is it?
No, it's not. And we had to go with all new equipment. Even back then, equipment today is 20% of what the weight was back then. My pack back in 2007 was Arc'teryx Bora 80, which probably weighs 16, 18 pounds. Well, wow. That's all been replaced now by lighter weight. I got a ULA pack now and the Gossamer gear. And so we had to just basically start from scratch, did a lot of research. We trained a lot, hiking on the B&A trail, the Baltimore to Annapolis trail, which goes from the airport to Annapolis. It's a asphalt trail, but it's a wonderful way to train. Did some hikes out in Western Maryland on the AT, and just set our mind to doing it and trained for about maybe a year before I quit my job and just went on the AT.
All right. So you literally did physically train for it. So was it physically challenging for you as a former military man? Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's no joke that it's probably easier if you start in Springer and work your way into the middle sections. Starting at Harper's Ferry wasn't all that physically demanding in the beginning, but it certainly wears on you, going from a desk job where you basically sat in your chair for 5 years, and suddenly there's no more chair. You have to pick it up and start walking. The first hill north of Harper's Ferry, I can't remember the name, but I probably had to sit down 4 times. It really wasn't a big hill. And then, get to Pennsylvania and walking on the rocks. It took a long time. Probably took 2 to 3 weeks to get really comfortable and feeling like this is what you can do.
But you know what? It's one of those things that I think wherever you start on the trail, it's challenging anyway. I mean, if you when you start in Georgia, that's not an easy state either, is it? There's plenty of climbing to be done there as well. And it's always a shock to me, both times really, that how difficult it is initially straight away to get your legs. But you obviously got into the physicality of it as well. Did you do a flip flop through hike?
Yes.
But I've got in my mind that you're also doing a section hike now. Is that right?
I have section hikes with other people, and because of our work with the Sheltowee, folks after they finish the Sheltowee are always looking for the next long adventure, and a lot go to the Appalachian Trail. So we go over there and hike with them. I've done Springer to Gooch Mountain to Dick's Gap to Franklin many times with small groups, people just trying to get into the AT, and it just keeps it in your blood. It keeps the thought of it still there in your blood.
So what did it feel like to you to finish the trail? Was it a real accomplishment to you, or was it just something, there's a check a box and we move on?
I think it set in motion for me the desire to keep doing things outdoors, to keep engaged in the trail community. to join the Appalachian Trail Long Distance Hikers Association, to attend their meetings, to do what I'm doing now. It just sort of made it easier to fall into what I do now, because I know what it's like to be in a trail community, which is what we're trying to develop here on the Sheltowee. So it just pretty much for everybody else, it's life changing. For me, I quit my job, but I didn't have to worry about getting another job when I came back, because I had retirement. So I had that less pressure to finish, go get a job again, and get a house again, and get a car again. I didn't have to give much of that up.
But as we've heard on this show many a time, people these days, they didn't when I first went in 2014, but they do now. They just quit their jobs and just think, it's okay, I'll sort it out when I come back, which I personally love that idea. So what was it that took you to the Sheltowee? Was that a natural transition for you, or how did you find the Sheltowee?
So after that AT experience, I obviously was free to go do what I wanted to do. And my parents were elderly, they're still alive. They're in their 90s now. And I wanted to get back. I've been gone from Kentucky basically for 25 years. And I wanted to get back and be part of my closer knit family, check on my parents. So I came back. I was on a farm about 30 miles from the northern end of the Sheltowee, and decided that I'm going to check it out. I had read about it in Backpacker magazine, I think back in '76 maybe, and just sort of forgot about it. And then when I got back to Kentucky, I saw on a map that there was this trail. It was 30 miles from where I lived, so just went over, did a little hiking, and found out there was some needs for maintenance and need for some changes to the trail and some repairs. So just felt like a natural thing. Didn't have a job, so why not volunteer and go hiking and volunteer work?
Quite right. So, and actually, when we spoke previously, you gave me some really interesting stuff about the trail and some history of it. So, why don't you just give the listeners a bit of a Cliff Notes version of some of the history and the development of the trail?
Well, the trail is 42 years old now, and it was started by an employee of the Daniel Boone National Forest who had an AT experience. He had an understanding professionally about the Appalachian Trail. So he wanted to build a trail across Kentucky from one end of the Daniel Boone Forest to the other. So basically from about 30 miles from the Ohio River into Tennessee, across the border into Pickett State Park, which is about 8 miles into Tennessee. The Forest Service named the trail after Daniel Boone, whose Native American name was Sheltowee, which meant big turtle, because when he was captured, trying to get away, he wasn't very fast at running because he was a big guy. So the chief sort of took him in, made him a son. He stayed there until he escaped. But forever after that, the Native Americans called him Sheltowee. So the Daniel Boone, sticking with that Boone theme, they decided to name the trail the Sheltowee Trace National Recreation Trail.
Nobody would ever have guessed that Daniel Boone was slow. He wasn't in the TV shows I used to watch when I was a kid. So you just destroyed an American myth in that case. So how long is the trail?
Originally, the trail was 287 miles. And in the last 10 years of our existence, we've been fortunate enough to extend the trail and reroute the trail. So now it's 343 miles. And by the end of this year, it'll be 354.
Is there a plan to make it longer than this?
Yeah, the plan is to take it to Rugby, Tennessee, which is another 11 miles from Burnt Mill Bridge, where the current southern terminus is. Rugby, Tennessee is a ancient, historic English-style town named after Rugby, England, and established by English pioneers and frontiers people who were escaping England to make a new life there. It's a really, really, really nice historic place to end the trail for the moment. Our goal is to get to the Cumberland Trail, which is in Wartburg, Tennessee, another 35 miles away. And that would connect the Sheltowee to the Cumberland Trail, which is part of the Great Eastern Trail, and puts our trail in the larger network of things. Our desire is to connect the Sheltowee on the north end to the North Country Trail and on the south end to the Great Eastern Trail. And then you have all kinds of possibilities especially if you've done the AT, you've done the CDT, you've done the PCT. Why not come to Kentucky or come to Tennessee and hike the Great Eastern Trail and swing up through the Sheltowee straight up into Ohio and catch the North Country Trail. So we firmly believe that all these trails in America, if we can connect up and build the network, they'll have a greater impact on keeping people out on the trails and keeping people engaged, especially in long distance trail opportunities.
And is the Sheltowee and we're not going to talk about the challenge yet, I can talk about that later, but is the Sheltowee used quite a lot, or are there times you can hike the Sheltowee and see nobody for a couple of days?
It depends on the season. Spring and fall, you can be out there. You hit the tourist sections of the trail around Cumberland Falls and Natural Bridge, Red River Gorge. You'll run into a lot of people through the week, or especially on the weekends. In the fall, right now in the winter, you could go 50 miles and never see a person. So you get isolation, and then you get some civilization, but especially in the south half of the trail, it's pretty isolated. It's pretty backcountry.
And you were talking about it being quite diverse as well. And you said it's no major elevation gains, but it's a bit like the roller coaster, which is a bit worrying for me. So talk to us, what's the feeling of the trail like? What does it feel like to be out there?
Well, it's a single track trail, and sections of it are multi-use, hiking all the way. Then there's a few sections where ATV folks can come on the trail and dirt bikes, but those are very short, maybe less than 10 miles here and there. And then this is Kentucky, so it's horse country. So there are a few sections where horses join the trail. Terrain wise, in the north, it's the Cumberland Plateau. So if you look at the geology of Kentucky, the Cumberland Plateau runs basically the entire length of the Daniel Boone into Tennessee, into the Big South Fork. So you get the up and down, but there's no Gooch Mountain climbs, or you might do 500 feet. The problem in Kentucky is they come at you faster. You don't get a long stretch of a ridge line that goes on for 5 miles and then you go down. You climb this hill, basically compared to the Appalachian Trail. You climb this hill and you got 50 feet and you're down the other side and you're back up another one. So it becomes a challenge to folks to develop that endurance to go down and up with very little recovery time in between. We have lots of rock caves, lots of waterfalls. The Sheltowee in the south goes along the Cumberland River, the Big South Fork River. In the north, there's the Red River Gorge, which is a national attraction, attracting thousands and thousands of climbers and hikers a year from all over the world. So the Sheltowee is the backbone trail through there, about 10 miles. And at any given time, you can run across hundreds of people. But once you get north or south, you're back into sort of an isolated experience.
Sure. So, and do many hikers use it as a shakedown for some of the longer distance hikes? Because 350 miles is a long walk, isn't it? Or do they just pick a part of it that's pretty good for perhaps a roller coaster type thing?
Yeah, we tell people all the time who call us about long distance hiking and hiking the Sheltowee as a thru-hike, that it is a good opportunity to test your skills. It takes about 21 to 24 days as a thru-hike, just depending on the weather, and obviously depending on your personal desire to walk 15 or 20 miles in a day, or 8 miles. But it is a great training opportunity before you go on the Appalachian Trail. One, you probably can get 30 days off work without quitting your job. And two, you can figure out, is long distance hiking for me? You and I, you've been out there, the AT, the first month, people suddenly figure, the first week, the first day, they figure out, oh, this ain't for me. Well, the problem is
the approach trail.
You just quit your trail.
Quit the approach trail.
Yeah, absolutely. Before they even get to Springer, they're like, why the heck did I quit my job, sell my car, put my furniture in hock, Why does my mom get all my stuff in her basement again after 20 years? So you come over here, you can try it. You get the same experience. We got shelters, we got privies, we got campfires, we got the woods, we got animals, we got poison ivy. You can do all the things you're going to do on the AT and figure it out. Figure out your pack weight, figure out your sleep schedule, sleep procedures, how to pack it up in the morning and how to unpack it at night. So it's a great opportunity. And then we have a lot of people who've done the AT and they see the 350 miles, which is a long trail. And they're like, oh, I want to get back to it. I want to get that feeling again that I had when I started on a great journey, but they don't want to now invest all that time again. So they come over and they hike south to north, north to south in the spring, just like they were a springer, and they're taking off again.
Yeah. And is there a shelter system in place, or is it just camping, designated camping areas? How do you run that part of it?
Well, again, when it was constructed, the model was the Appalachian Trail. So AT has shelters every 8, 10, 12 miles. So that was the beginning thought process. But as is always the case with funding, 3 shelters were built, 2 north of Cumberland Falls within a mile of each other, and 1 south of Cumberland Falls. And they're all Adirondack-style shelters that hold 8 people, 3-sided, no privies, except that one of them has a privy up in the woods. And then they just decided, management changed, ideas changed, so they didn't build any more shelters. And now most people are like, don't build any shelters. We just like camping in the woods. So there are plenty of fire rings, 300 feet off the trail is the rule. And there's plenty of sites that you can pitch your tent or hang your hammock. But if you need the shelters are there. The 2 north of Cumberland Falls were built for scouts. And scouts do use those because it's a 10, 12 mile hike from Cumberland Falls to Laurel Lake. And a lot of scout groups come in and the kids stay in the shelters.
I remember kids and scouts in the shelters on the AT as well. They're to be avoided at all costs if it's all possible.
Yeah.
Now, you got more than peripherally involved, though, didn't you? I mean, you said you got involved in trail maintenance and so on. And you told me before that before, say, 2009, it was kind of a bit hit and miss out there. So you've got involved at quite a senior level within the organization. So what is your role now and how did you get into that?
So I sat around for 2 years while folks on a bulletin board like whiteblaze.net, Sheltowee had its own bulletin board. And folks were complaining and they were talking about trail conditions and lack of blazing and trees down and nobody doing maintenance and the same things that they talk about trails all the time, even today still. And after 2 years, I decided that I'd get involved and try and do something about it, along with a handful of other men and women who were concerned about the same thing. A couple who had already hiked the Sheltowee through all those issues. And so we formed an association. And because I was retired, didn't have a job, they said, you be in charge. Good luck. And so for 10 years, 11 years now, I've been the executive director of the Sheltowee Trace Association. We got involved really because there was 25 miles north of Moorhead to the northern terminus that suffered a severe ice storm. And there were probably hundreds of trees down, and there was no effort being made because of lack of manpower and a perceived lack of interest by the Forest Service to clear that trail. So one of the guys called me up and said, hey, I got a bunch of fraternity guys from Moorhead State. They're going to meet me out there. We're going to clear the trail. And we cleared the trail of all those trees called the Forest Service. And they were like, what? You did what? You did what? We're like, it's clear. So they've been telling people who called, oh, it's closed north of Moorhead. And we're like, no, it's not closed anymore. We just opened it. So from there, we formed the association with the Forest Service, with the Park Service, with state parks. And so now we preserve and protect and promote the trail. And we've been pretty successful at it.
By the sound of things you have, and there's 2 things I just want to mention. I mentioned earlier that John, this guy, our listeners, John Park, suggested I reach out to you in the first place. And of course, he was more than willing to share a few things about you. First, can you tell me what are
lies, damn lies.
Well, the first one is, what are Steve miles when Sheltowee hikers mention them?
This is ironic because we just had a hike this past weekend, and that the comment comes up all the time with first-time hikers. I use the maps that we produce through a professional map company to give people mileage. They say, how far is it? The map says 10 miles. I tell them 10 miles. But they get their GPS out, their little whatever tracker, their Fitbit on their wrist, and they finish it, and they're like, well, that's 13 miles. You said 10 miles. I didn't say it. The map said it. But they believe their GPS device over the map, which, is probably true. Their GPS device is accurate, but it doesn't take in the advanced trigonometry of Steve Miles.
Steve Miles is the one they should always go with.
That's what, it's 300 it's 343 miles because that's what the map says. But everybody believes I'm just making it up. So now I tend to make it up, because if I tell them the truth, they don't believe me. And if I tell them Steve Miles, they don't believe me. They're just like all hikers. It's too many miles today and not enough miles tomorrow.
Well, that was nowhere near as defensive as I suspect this one might be, which was, John pointed me towards a YouTube video that referred to an email that you sent hikers with directions at a certain place. Do you remember that?
Sure. Yeah.
And the thing is, apparently, as I understand it, you provided directions that when southbound hikers get to the top of Natural Bridge in the Red River Gorge area, to turn left when you should have said right. And it apparently led to some unwelcome bonus miles. And they put out a video reading your email back to you. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, absolutely correct. They have to recognize that, sometimes even military guys don't know their left from their right. So, some of that was, I had previously done the mileage the opposite direction. Every year we put out trace notes, which are available for free. It's like a 2-page synopsis of a section of the trail. And sometimes, to be honest with you, I don't edit it quite close enough, and my lefts and rights get mistaken.
It was said with love. It was said with love, Steve, I promise you.
To be honest, if you get lost in Natural Bridge, you deserve it, because there's only 3 trails that go to the same place, the bridge. So sooner or later you can figure it out, I would hope. But John Park needs to come out and lead a hike. That's the thing I need John to do.
Oh, there you go. There's a challenge, John. So you should meet that challenge. So, but the reason I really wanted to interview was because John suggested you, and then I've recently seen quite a few Facebook posts about the Sheltowee Trace Challenge, and I thought that was fascinating. How did that come about?
In 2012, one of our board members, we're a nonprofit, so we have a nonprofit board. And he and I and a lawyer, which coincidentally, the lawyer showed up this past weekend to hike with me again after all these years. And we took a hike. It started raining, so we ducked in under an arch just to get out of the rain. And while we were hanging around waiting for this heavy rain to stop, he suggested that we needed a way to get people out on the trail besides maintenance. Get more people involved in hiking and camping on the Sheltowee. And his idea was to hike the trail 1 weekend a month for 11 months, 12 months. And at the end of the year, you've hiked the entire trail. So it's basically a 25, 30 mile weekend, Saturday, Sunday, one overnight, sleep in the woods, and go home on Sunday.
Nice.
So I said, sure, great idea, Dave. And that was about October of 11. And he said, well, let's get it done. So I sort of put things together, sent a few emails out. This is pre-Facebook. And we had 12 men and 2 ladies show up in the south at Pickett State Park, the southern terminus at the time. And we just took off. There was no formality. There was no fees. We all just chipped in for the shuttle. And at the end of the year, 14 people finished. And we had a great old time with our own sort of Aldi gathering in an Irish pub. And
of course,
everybody was like, oh, this is great. And in fact, people heard about it and they showed up for the little gathering in the Irish pub because they want to know, are you going to do this next year in 2013? We said, sure, why not? So in 2013, we had about 40 people, and it's grown ever since. It's now into its 11th year, and over 1,000 folks have participated in the program. And about half of those have actually finished the program in 1 year.
So how do you do it then? Because you can't all say 100 of you go out at the same time. So how do you work it out then?
It's a closed event. You have to register. You can't just show up because we have to provide shuttle for whoever's going to show up. Sure. It goes 2 weekends a month, usually the middle 2 weekends in the month, just based on holidays and things. And we have 2 teams. This year, we actually have 3 teams. We expanded the program to a 3-day, 2-night adventure for those who can't walk 16, 18 miles in one day.
Sure.
That team does 8 or 10 miles over 3 days to get it done. So the two teams that are one-night teams, you register them. We have a limit to the number of people, and you show up and we shuttle you to the start point and you hike back to your car at the end point. It's not a lead hike. You don't follow the leader. You could be at the end all day if you want, or you could start at the end and pass everybody in front of you and finish first. It's not a race. We try and give people the flexibility to make mistakes, the flexibility to figure it out on their own, because I believe that provides the adventure to them. You know, we all complain we got lost on the AT or we got lost in the Sheltowee, but that's part of the adventure. That's part of the storytelling. That's part of the community. So we don't want to take a lot of that away. We do have people out there who have hiked it before. They're out there sweeping, making sure nobody gets lost. I had one person get lost this past weekend. She was 2.5 miles off trail, and we found her. She was at a fire tower. We only have one fire tower up there. She got to that fire tower somehow, 2.5 miles off trail, but we got her, brought her back. She continued the hike. So we're there for safety. We're there for knowledge. We're there to make sure you have a reasonable experience in the backcountry. And you got to remember, Steve, most of the people that show up with us have no experience.
I was going to ask what level of hiker it's suitable for, because people will listen to this. I immediately, I've done long distance hiking now. But if I hadn't done any hiking at all, I would think this is right up my street. This is the sort of thing I think I could approach. How basic is their hiking experience in a lot of cases? Are some doing it literally for the first time?
This weekend, literally over half the people never did a long distance hike in their life. They've hiked in the community park. They've hiked around the streets at home. They've never put a backpack on and carried 18 or 20, 30 pounds and walked 10 miles. This past weekend, it was 10 miles on Saturday. Sunday, it was 15 miles. So majority are ladies in their 50s. We do have lots of experienced people. We've got a whole cadre of people who've done the Hiker Challenge who come back every year to do it again. We have one couple. He's done it 8 times. She's done it 7 times. He did it the first year with me. They're back this year, him for his 9th time and her for whatever 8th time. I don't think she's ever going to catch him because she can't get the hike by herself. He always comes with her. So there's lots of experience to help the inexperienced. But remember, again, our goal principally is to make sure everybody is safe, everybody has a reasonable good time, as you can do on a backpacking adventure. And 3, that you're qualified in your mind, in your heart, in your soul to go on the AT or go on the long trail in Vermont or the mountain to sea trail or even just a state park trail that's only 10 miles long, and pitch your tent, make your food, go to the bathroom, get up in the morning, get it all secure and hike out. So our goal is to build new long distance hikers or just overnight backpackers. And so they take those skills and they transfer that to their children or their friends, and the community grows. Not just our community, but the national long distance hiking and backpacking community grows.
Yeah, I think it's an absolutely laudable goal. I think it's something that people should want to do as well, want to think it's possible to do. So can people still get involved in this year's challenge, or is it too late now?
Well, there are limits, but see, what John doesn't tell you about me is that I have certain miles, and I have certain limits that I don't exceed, that I don't go by. We find a place for everybody, because we know that 50% of the people who start this year won't finish this year, simply because they figure out, I already have 5 people quit after Saturday, the first day. And that's to be expected. This isn't for everybody. Yeah. You know that. Everybody knows it.
Absolutely.
It takes something inside you to want to go out there and hike 13 miles or 18 miles.
But it sounds like it's structured in a way for people to learn that without having a massive expense and without really committing too much time. So I think that's a perfect intro for someone. That's really why I'm asking, Pete, because this is going to go out on Thursday, the 20th, I think it is, of January. So they're getting late for January already. But if someone listens to this on Thursday says, man, I'd really like to do that, is it still possible for them to join that group?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I just let 2 people in today. We just have to know in advance so we can get the logistics
Of
down,
course.
make sure everybody
Of
can
course.
get there. We even have equipment, and we do orientations before January, between the last hike and our gathering the first Saturday in December. After that's over, I go on the orientation tour, most of them virtual now because of COVID, and talk about the trail, talk about success, talk about how you can do this, answer questions. And we tell people straight up, if this is new and you've never done it before, don't go buy a bunch of gear. Don't go spend $1,000 and hike one time and quit and call me up and say, can you buy my gear? Can you sell my gear? Because I can't. You'll get half what you paid for it. So we actually have equipment that will lend people to give them a chance to figure it out, other than their boots and food, but backpacks, tents, all that stuff. We have extra stuff we lend people. And if you like it, and you want to use our stuff all year, no problem. If you like it and after a month or two, it's time to invest in a backpack or a sleeping bag, that's great. We'll be happy to help you locate something. And our outfitters in the region are really, really good, like all outfitters are, about meeting people at the door and helping them make the right choices, not just based on money, but based on quality and what their ambitions are. So you can get in. You can get in probably up through March. We had some folks start 5 months late and make up all those hikes on their own and finish with the rest of us. So it's possible. Cool. They just have to reach out to us.
And it's been going on for 10 years now. What changes have you seen in the challenge, or is it just the same as it was then, or is it just gear gets lighter?
I'd say that over the years, we've probably done more catering to folks than we should have. It started out a little more rustic, and we've gotten sort of trying to help people finish, trying to help people be happy, have trail magic at different, lots of trail magic, lots of pickles in the summertime, a few cold beers here and there. This year, we sort of dialed some of that back to reacquaint folks with the traditional backpacking experience, a few less campgrounds, a few less nice places to camp, more backcountry camping in places that never been camped before. So we can reduce our footprint on the environment and to give them a more truer experience and make sure they understand their expectations are correct. So people say, as you know, anybody that's done this thing before, they're now experts and they don't want anybody to have a better opportunity than them. So we get lots of people come back and they're like, well, you didn't do that for us. You didn't do that for us. And I'm like, well, we're growing, and now we're sort of going backwards to some of that things that they didn't get, and trying to reacquaint the program as an experience in the woods.
Well, just before we wrap up, there's one thing I wanted to ask. I'd forgotten. I didn't write it down as a question before. Do you all, when you go in a group, do you tend to all camp together, or do you camp wherever you want to camp, or do you all end up? You obviously all end up in the same place together at the end of the weekend. What about each night?
We do have a group campsite that's preset. We try and use the same locations every year to not damage the environment, not damage the forest. You don't hike together as one giant group. You might hike by yourself if you want. You might pick up some new friends. Lots of people, just like on the AT, make lifelong hiking buddies, hiking friends. Everybody camps in the same location, being a large location. And if you want to camp off to the side, 100 yards away from everybody, go at it. All we do is ask folks to check in with our camp leaders to make sure everybody got to camp and everybody's accounted for. Because if they're not, then we have ways that we go track people down and say, you all right? And but most people through orientation learn they carry their tent, they carry their sleeping bag, and if they can't get to camp, they're encouraged just to pull off the trail, just like you would on the AT, and find a place to camp and check in with us in the morning. We certainly don't leave anybody in the woods on Sunday when they all get back to their cars. And we've never really had a trouble with anybody really getting lost beyond that. Most of the time they're within 20 minutes of camp and they just got tired. So they just bailed out and camped up, and we find them the next morning sleeping in their tent. Which
is a wonderful thing. So, I'm I'm really grateful that firstly John reached out and suggested I speak to you, but I'm grateful to you for filling us in so much on what I think is a really great initiative for people to learn how to do this stuff without spending tons of money initially. And so I thank you for coming on the show. And my guess is you'll get at least one call these next couple of days when somebody else wants to join your party. So thanks for coming on the show, Steve.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, and we hope people will check us out at sheltoweetrace.org.
I'm going to put all that in the show notes. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.
Do you know what? Steve is just the sort of bloke you want leading something like that. He's a doer and he gets things done. The world is full of whingers and whiners who never get off their backside to actually affect change. But Steve, and I presume his board and their volunteers, aren't whining. They're putting their efforts into making the Sheltowee Trace Trail a welcoming environment to everybody. And that hike per month is darn genius. You'll do a substantial through hike. You'll see the trail at every season. I think that's a particularly important thing. And you'll meet new people out in the woods. It's tough to top that one, isn't it? Nice one, Steve. And by the way, thanks to John Park for sharing a couple of questions for Steve. He took them with really good grace. Oh yeah, when Steve and I first spoke, he said that his girlfriend, Laura, was beside herself, that he was talking with me for the show. Laura is a listener, and when we finished recording, Steve called her in to chat with me. So I asked for a picture of the two of them together for the show notes. So Laura, you're on the show this week. Actually, talking about being in the woods, last weekend Dana and I were at Hancon and tried out a couple of hammocks. I've got to say they were pretty darn comfortable. I'm not sure if I'm ever going to get one because my hiking days are likely to be a little bit limited going forward. But if I was a bit younger, I might have had a go at swinging between the trees. Jester was with us this weekend, as was Courtney from Hiking Unfiltered, and Jester took delivery of her first hammock setup. I'm looking forward to hearing how it goes for her. Now, let me introduce you to a couple who, when we recorded, hadn't actually told some of their family and even business partners that they were doing the trail this year. But as you're going to hear, Hugh and Kerry Ickrath are tackling the trail in a rather novel way. I had to hold off this interview for a couple of weeks and only got the nod to go ahead last week. Here are Hugh and Kerry. So today we've got a couple going on the AT in 2022, and they've got a really quite interesting story right now. This is Hugh and Kerry Ickrath. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, good.
Hi,
Happy New
doing
Year.
well. How are you?
Now, I'm good, thanks, and Happy New Year to you as well. Now, you're going in 2022, and we're not going to release this until you tell the rest of your family that you're actually going. So how's this all built up? What's happened?
So we told my sisters this weekend, and I warned you that probably wasn't going to go well. And so my middle sister immediately burst into tears and
Right.
was almost inconsolable.
Why? What, as a matter of interest, why?
Well, she likes the routine. We see each other on a weekly basis. She lives on her own, so I think she really lives for, being around us on this routine that we have.
She can go with you.
Well, Hughes tried to convince her to do some of the overnights, at the
Cool.
places that we're staying, and she's most likely to do it because she's more adventurous than I am. But anyway, but I tried to warn him. I said this isn't going to go well, and it didn't.
And I was surprised, nonetheless.
And if you don't mind me asking, why did you leave it until 2022 before you told them you were going in 2022?
Oh, that was Hughes' idea.
Well, I guess we were unsure how they were going to handle it to some degree. We didn't have all of our dates lined up, and there still seemed to be some questions about the details.
Okay. And we're going to talk about the details actually now. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. I asked the others, but yours is, and this is particularly interesting to me. You're going to do the Platinum Blazing hike, aren't you? Suggested by Bruce Matson. He's helped you with this. So tell me, what is the Platinum Blazing hike, and how does it work for you?
The idea of a hike that would allow Kerry to join me is something that was totally foreign to me. Before I heard Bruce on your show talking about his little pet project that he wound up writing about, and really had further designs on following through with more regarding the possibilities.
So you've got an itinerary which talks to how many nights are you going to be spending in the woods, Kerry?
As few as possible.
But there will be some?
There probably will be some, like if we miscalculate and we don't get as far on a certain day as we need to. But that will be in the minority.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to be quite a challenge, I would think, logistically. Are you quite, because I know you're quite, you and I have known each other for a couple of years now, since my 2019 hike, Hugh, and you kind of gave me trail magic on that. Mm-hmm. Are you, and I know you're the one that you're a planning type person. Are you comfortable with how this has all worked? Looking like it's going to work out for you?
Well, I'll be honest. Bruce's assistance gave me a level of confidence and that this was doable. He actually laid out the first 30 days, and Bruce. I mean, talk about a planner. That guy was a planner, so he's actually laid out our first 30 days. I mean, everywhere, mileage, where we're staying, the whole 9 yards.
That's hilarious. Because most people we tell on the show, I know you listen to the show, most people we tell, don't worry about a plan, just go with it. You'll just adapt to it and so on. You will still have to learn to adapt to some things. As Kerry rightly said, you may miss one of those things. It doesn't matter if you miss it because you'll have to go another time to another place. But this is probably one of the best long trails to be able to get off the trail. You couldn't do it on the PCT, right, and you couldn't do it on the CDT, I'm sure. Right. So this is the one to do it. So when are the two of you actually planning to start the trail?
So Kerry has work commitments through early March, and so we're looking second week of March.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
And so what is your actual hiking experience?
Well,
and this actually speaks to how you're preparing physically, I guess.
Yeah, I've hiked since I was a little boy with my family, and this is in the Shenandoahs.
Yeah.
We hiked and camped as a family in the Shenandoahs. And Kerry and I have been together since college in '82. So we've been hiking Mary's Rock, where I, met you and Trigger.
Sure. Yeah.
Cushy life. So, we've been hiking that particular hike for, pushing 40 years now.
Oh, really? So you actually, I didn't even know you'd done much hiking at all, Kerry, but you haven't done many or any overnights at all, have you?
No. We usually just do day hiking.
With absolutely little desire to do so as well, is that right?
Right, exactly. I just go along with her.
Our camping has been, pull the car up and then walk about 20 feet away.
Right, and that's a compromise because between his family actually really camping and my family's idea of camping, meaning hang out at the bonfire, then get in the car and go to the motel, that actually driving up and spending the night in the tent is the compromise. So...
do you know what? I think this is exciting as far as I'm concerned. So, and your thought process, we talk about the mental approach because it is a strong mental approach. You are going to be relatively comfortable quite a lot of the time. So do you think the mental approach to you is going to be important, or do you think it's less important for you than Kerry?
For me, I think mentally, what's going to get me through each day is knowing that there's probably a nice bed waiting for me. So it's just the hike is a means to the end. So I'm going to be focusing on the nights. The days are just how I get there. As opposed to, I'm not one to like walk through nature and I'm admiring the view and all of that. So
that may change.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
What about you? Hugh? Is the mental approach, because to a degree, it may well be that you may be the pivotal one to keep things going. Because if Kerry gets a little bit down and or if you get a bit down, she'll say, "Come on, let's go home then."
Oh no. I said I'm not going to be a quitter. I don't do that. I don't do that. So.
Okay. So what about your approach then, Hugh?
Yeah, I love everything about it. I love the hiking. I love the nature. I love the views. I love the camping. I love the campfire. But this type of approach is, allowing Kerry to join me. And, this all started out from the idea of a college graduation of a friend's son. And I kind of had anticipated he and I going.
All right.
And since I'm not nearly the caring, thoughtful person that Kerry is, that idea kind of got me in trouble. But in our life, very often our initial plan is not the end where we wind up. So this is just another example of when the plan.
Do you know what? That's fine. That's life, isn't it?
It kind of morphs.
That is life, though,
yeah,
isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's great. Yeah. So when you came to the Woods Hole weekend, had you decided already then to go, Kerry?
No, actually, I was going to.
Because I would have put you down as unenthusiastic.
No.
I would have put you down as unenthusiastic.
No, I think I'm still in that category, but willing to do it. Yeah, I definitely was just interested in checking. I felt better after that weekend. I felt like, good. Maybe I actually can do this.
So what happens if one of you has to quit, injury or something like that? Will the other one carry on?
Well, it's not me. If he gets hurt, I'm not going to keep going. So I can't speak for him, but
I did guess that answer, by the way.
Yeah.
What about you, Hugh?
I think not. I mean, we'd probably, see what's going on at the time, but I would say probably the odds are it wouldn't happen.
Right. Okay. And are you getting? Well, I'm about to say you get support from your family, but we don't know yet, do we?
Well, we don't know. Well, I think so. I think the concern was that I knew my sisters were not going to be excited about this, but they're supportive and they'll be fine. I think being overly enthusiastic is what Hugh's concern was, like that his sister might try to do it with us, and he doesn't.
Right.
And so I think he really. His sister, my cousin, there's a lot of people that would want to do it with us. And I don't think that's really what Hugh is envisioning and they might be able to meet us a couple times, but we don't want people doing the hike with us. Is that right, Hugh? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I mean,
the thing is though, if you've got 400 or 500 miles on your legs, they're going to struggle to keep up anyway. So you know what, I'd encourage them to come out and just visit you at a trailhead, but give you some food one day.
Right. Or spend the night at one of our platinum blazing.
That's really the key. I think that's a very important element is this notion that so we've got a fairly structured plan. We've got accommodations that are going to be very exciting for anybody to kind of partake of. So it lends itself to all kinds of our family and friends to join us on different parts, and we're flip-flopping, so we're not going to be far from home initially.
Right.
I mean, our starting point.
Where will you finish then? Where are you going to flip from?
Flip from Thornton Gap, so that's just shy of.
Right. So you finish at Thornton Gap?
No, we'll start Thornton Gap to Georgia, come back up to Thornton Gap, and go north to Katahdin.
Oh right, okay. I didn't realize it was that way. Oh, that's interesting. Why are you doing it that way? Oh, don't tell me that was the plan.
You've got me convinced. I can't not finish in Katahdin. Just
good man. Quite right
too. Just can't do it. I can't finish in a parking lot where I hiked as a kid. That's not.
Now this is an unfair question for Kerry here because I think I know the answer already. Mm-hmm. But what are you most looking forward to?
So I'm looking forward to the nights being, at the hotel, motel, B&B, hostel, whatever. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I kind of guess that might be. What about you, Hugh?
I think, your podcast has so emphasized the great people that are out there.
Sure.
And I'm looking forward to, coming across great, interesting people.
That's really why he's bringing me, because he wants me to talk to them. He wants me to engage with them.
She'll be there to remember them. She's got the, great memory. So.
That's cool. Well, and what are you least looking? I was about to get it, Kerry. I think I know your answer to this one, Kerry. What are you least looking forward to?
I am least looking forward to rocks. I am not climbing over rocks. I said I'll go around, or I will wait at the bottom for you to come back down. But I am not climbing up any big rocks.
So you can see we've got some challenges.
I think you've got 1 or 2 challenges there, but that's okay. And what are you least looking forward to then, Hugh? But the rocks, by the sound of things.
Kerry falling.
Of course.
You're at least looking forward to that, like that's going to happen.
Well, it's going to happen. Everybody, right, Steve? Everybody falls.
Yeah, everybody falls. Yeah. 43. Was it 46 times first time and 43 times second time? There's a bit of a pattern going on there. I'm getting better. I was 3 falls better second time. That's good. Yeah. And what about trail names? Have you thought of trail names yet?
We have. Yeah.
Okay, what are you?
Well, Hugh thinks that mine should be platinum because of my hair and where we're staying. I said, I don't know. I feel a little more like Private Benjamin,
Oh, nice.
but I can go with that. I can go with platinum.
Platinum's a nice name. What about you, Hugh?
Nando.
Oh, very nice. You didn't tell me. He didn't tell me what his name was going to be.
Yeah.
Nando.
Yeah.
Nando.
I'll
my
let
sister, So my sister, the one that was crying, she calls him Nando because I don't know if you remember when the rugby team down in South America crashed in the Andes, and they had to make their way out of there. Two of them, right. The two that walked out, Nando Paredo and Roberto Canessa, they saved them. They walked out of the mountain and they saved their teammates. Cool. So Kelly calls Hugh Nando because he's always getting her out of a jam. He's always like carrying her bags in the airport or getting rid of an old bad boyfriend or something, whatever it is. Kelly, that's Nando. So everybody calls him Nat too because he's always getting other people out of jams. So
that is a great name. I really like it. Well, look, I wish you too well. I think I'm thrilled that you're doing this. I've got to tell you, Kerry, you need to be rethinking the idea of rocks, though. Just think about it a bit because it's going to be okay. You'll get into it so much. So please You don't have to say anything now. You can nod your head. That's good. I can see you nodding.
Okay.
But it's going to be fun. Enjoy it. And when you get out there, we'll stay in touch, and we'll keep in touch by telephone. And we'll bring you on the show when you've got something exciting to tell us, like when you've met your first rock. We should be on about mile 001.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
All right, guys. Well, look, lovely to talk to you. And you're going to let me know when I can release this, and we'll take it from there, okay?
Absolutely. And Steve, I have to say that, it's no secret. I've loved your show. It's such a part of my story and why I wanted to do this. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here and be a part of it. I love it. I loved it from the first time I followed you, and I've met up with some of your Katie Phoenix and Mr. President. And so I love everything about your show. It fires me up every Thursday. I want to go hiking. So it's great to be a part of it.
I truly appreciate that. All right. Okay, guys, you take it easy, and we'll speak soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I told you, it's a somewhat novel approach. Hugh's looking forward to the hiking and the people, while Kerry is looking forward to the hostels and the hotels. You've got to admit, hike your own hiker has rarely been more appropriate. We're going to hear back from the two of them in a few weeks' time. Thanks as ever this week goes to our wonderful donors for their support that keeps us churning out new shows. Monthly donors Todd Withrow, Suzanne Johnson, John Cratler, Sean Deadwiley, Betty McEnany, Ann Hinton, who kindly upped her donation this month, and Emmanuel Bravo Ramos. They all kept the faith this month, so cheers to you guys. Also, we had a donation from Matt Kaluda, so thanks to you, Matt, as well. If you'd like to help support our shows, just click on one of the donate buttons on our hikingradionetwork.com website, and the rest is easy. Cheers all. Now, for the last time, Winton Porter's Just Passing Through reaches the end of the road. As you know, I'm not going to start reading a new book until after my 5-week trip to the UK in March, so please feel free to send me suggestions for my next book to read. Email me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com if you've got an interesting read that you think others would like to hear. I'll see you next week. Chapter 20. Living in the breezeway of life. If places have souls, then the soul of Mountain Crossings is its covered breezeway. It is here along these 7 paces of the Appalachian Trail that pass under my roof and between my house and my store, the Mountain Crossings earns a right to its name. This is the crossing itself, the place of passage, the scene of transformation. Here, those who come in weary and doubtful may go out with fresh determination. Those who come in dismayed after the 30 hard miles from where the trail begins at Springer Mountain may go out delighted to welcome more than 2,000 more. Here wanderers become friends and friends become wanderers again. Like them, the precious things in life are changing all the time. Sierra's eyes have begun to take on the playfully wise look of her mother's. Alison is getting Margie's wild, quick smile, and when I sit and dream in the breezeway, my heart fills with what I suppose I should call a prayer. Let me be a grateful man. Sierra, move in a little closer to your daddy. You're covering up the white blaze on the wall. Alison, can you hold your new puppy a little higher? Sky, look at me. Margie, don't move. You look perfect, wonderful, adorable. Love that smile. Billy, are you taking a picture or trying to score a date with my wife? Sensitive, are we? Okay, everybody say, well, that's a ye. Are we done now, Billy? Alison asks. Patches is a little hard to hold. She's a squirmy puppy. Not yet. Alpine and Jennifer, you're next. Stand over there in the breezeway. After this, I want a picture of everybody. Someone go find Pirate. And did I see Baltimore Jack walking today? Sierra, would you go find Jack? It's picture day for Billy, which tells me that he's leaving on an extended journey soon. Yesterday, when I saw his old pack propped by the hostel door, I asked him where, and he said he wasn't really sure. Thought I would head west for a little while and hike in Yosemite. I haven't been there in a few years, and I got an old friend out there I haven't seen in a while. Do you want to come? I always want to come. Maybe next time. That's what you said last year. When you headed out, I asked him, knowing he wouldn't say. He smiled, whistled Sky over, and rubbed her between the ears. It could be today or tomorrow, but it will be within a week. The winds will know. Meanwhile, our parade of characters continues. The heaviest pack ever carried into mountain crossings came in on top of a staggering, cursing, wretched Dmitry Kupunis. Billy and I were standing near the breezeway, discussing his plans for departure when Coop came down the trail from Blood Mountain. "Good God," Billy said, and pointed across the road. A group of hikers gathered, and we watched Coop's painful-looking last 50 yards. "What is that? Does he have a piano in there? Maybe it's Santa Claus. I can't tell if the pack's carrying the man or the man's carrying the pack. Looks like an ant bringing home dinner." When he crossed the road, shouting, over the screeching brakes of a car that almost ran him over on the curve, into a cell phone, I recognised him. "That's Coop," I said. "He ain't dead after all." Billy said he looked like he was pretty close. We'd had word that Coop was out there attempting to break a hiking record of 620 miles in 40 days, but that was more than a week ago. We had assumed he had vanished from the trail or had never been on it in the first place. Coop is a loud talker, and by the time he'd managed to wrestle his pack off and stiffly return a wave of greeting, we had caught the drift of his cell phone conversation. After 30 tough-as-nails miles from the southern start, he was giving up on the other 590. "Yeah, pick me up at Neil's Gap. What time do you think? 10 o'clock? Fine. Hold on, I'm getting another call. Hello? Yeah, I'm just getting a ride now. See if you can find me a flight out first thing tomorrow morning. I'll call you back when I'm on the road. Okay, bye. Hello? Yeah, 10 o'clock, we said. Tonight then. Okay, bye." The first and the last time I'd seen Coop had been at a convention of outdoor retailers in Salt Lake City 5 years ago. He had made a powerful but not very agreeable impression on me at the time. Then he was a brash, bustling entrepreneur whose fledgling Colorado company was heading into its second year of business. His company had some new ideas, and Coop was scrapping and shoving and hobnobbing to get those ideas out there, on the map. He may not have had time for a sense of humour. I remembered him as a short, muscular, phenomenally stressed-out guy, a cannonball of entrepreneurial passion who was just a little too much to handle. Now I watched him shuffle slowly along the gravel pathway toward the breezeway, dragging a backpack stuffed to the size of a washing machine. He came up to me with a huge grin, followed by loud laughter. "I think that this is the dumbest thing I've ever tried to do," Coop said. "How much did you start with?" I asked. £140 when I left. It's probably 135 now. Several hikers standing around cursed softly in disbelief. "I haven't eaten hardly anything in the past 5 days, Coop said. "No wonder it took you 5 days to get here," I said. "Yeah, it was a little harder than I thought. I sort of miscalculated the weight versus miles thing, and I'm not moving nearly as fast as I had originally thought. If you're hungry, Pirate's got some spaghetti downstairs in the hostel." "Starved. Let me make one more phone call and I'll head down." Returning to his BlackBerry, he made a hunchbacked waddle around the parking lot, still laughing at himself. "Yeah, I made it. Yeah, supposed to have happened sooner. I know, almost killed me." Coop's demeanour was warmer and less uptight than I remembered. I wondered whether it was his business success or the punishment of his recent hike that had mellowed him out. His business had done very well. Coop is the founder and president of Go Light, the most successful commercial producer of ultralight backpacking equipment in the United States. About that time, Baltimore Jack came walking up through the breezeway and eyed Coop's pack lying victorious on the gravel pathway. He tried to pick it up. "Holy crap, what is this guy thinking?" Baltimore asked, looking my way. "That's what I said. You'll have to ask him." Jack Tarlin, Baltimore Jack, has been hiking this trail for the past 20 years. His famous trail name notwithstanding, he grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. His father was a graduate of Harvard and a professor of Romance languages there, and his mother was a librarian. Jack himself holds a master's degree in medieval history and is a wandering encyclopedia of kings, queens, wars and plagues. His head seems constantly to be buried in a book. What he calls his last real job was selling movies to chain video stores across the country. When the company wouldn't give him leave of absence to hike the Appalachian Trail, he quit and absented himself permanently. Since then, he's completed 80 thru-hikes over and over again. He was married once and has one grown daughter. He speaks about her fondly and often. In his younger days, the only time you would have seen Jack on the trail was when he was passing you, puffing cigarette smoke like a freight train. He gave up the habit some time ago, but he drinks Jim Beam as well as ever, and he still keeps a pack of Camel Lights in his pack for hikers in need. Along with the smokes, he carries Appalachian Trail patches that he gives away as souvenirs to curious tourists and their kids. Over the years, he has become the unofficial beat reporter for what is happening on the trail. Dimitri Kupunas was news, and Jack wanted the scoop. Downstairs in the hostel, a group of hikers was finishing up dinner. Coop, having already heaped his plate with the last pound of spaghetti, was scraping the bottom of the pan for a few more ounces of sauce. Jack took a chair near Coop. He had his reporter face on and his baseball cap turned backward on his head. He had lined up some tough questions for the company honcho in the plastic rain suit. Coop, you can't be serious. 140-pound pack, 620 miles in 40 days, no resupply? What the hell were you thinking? I don't know, Coop burbled through a mouthful of spaghetti. Are you crazy or just stupid? Coop chowed down happily while a bunch of us took turns lobbing good-natured bombs at him. The head of Go-Light packing 140 pounds, that's sort of like Ben & Jerry's sponsoring a Weight Watchers convention. It's like Rosie O'Donnell pitching Viagra. It's like Toby Keith covering Tupac. So is there an ultra-heavy backpacking movement now too? For winter hiking, do you recommend the Anvil or the 16-ton safe? Coop's laughter was contagious, and he passed much of the evening making fun of himself, which endeared him to one and all. He hit it off especially with Baltimore Jack. It turned out they had grown up in some of the same parts of Massachusetts and had frequented a few of the same bars, so it wasn't long before they discovered they shared similar political views. They ranted and slapped each other on the back, moaning about their common enemies in Washington. Before long, nobody knew what the conversation was really about anymore. After Coop cleaned his plate of spaghetti, he and Jack moved their interview to the store, where a small crowd watched with some interest as I packed up Coop's gear. He had decided to ship it back to Colorado instead of carrying it on the plane. I spent half an hour loading, taping and weighing the 3 boxes needed, each box the size of a truck tyre. Coop, I said, you have indeed shattered a record today. Coop asked how much it was. There was a murmur among the oddsmakers. 136 pounds. There were hoots of amazement, beating the old record by 47 pounds. You and Go-Light now hold the record for the heaviest pack and for the most weight we ever shipped back home for anybody. That's a proud moment, he said, slapping his knee. You're officially an old-fashioned hiker, Coop, I said. I think someday we might even carry Go-Light in the store now. Coop caught his ride back to Atlanta around 10 o'clock that night, and I thought I had seen the last of him for a while, until the morning when the phone rang almost exactly 12 hours after his departure. He was calling back to see if we had shipped his gear. Yeah, UPS picked it up about 15 minutes ago. I can probably call my driver's cell phone and get him to bring it back. What's up? I wanted to go hiking again, but not with all that gear. Go light this time. What you're saying is that your staff doesn't want you to come back yet, right? Coop chuckled. I just want to hike. Can you get it back? Sure. Where are you at now? Standing in the Atlanta airport. Okay, hop on the MARTA and head for the Lindbergh station. My dad is driving up this way in about an hour and I'll have him pick you up there. Coop arrived back at the shop a few hours later and UPS returned his gear that afternoon. I loaned Coop my old truck and over the next 3 days he stayed at the cabin just hanging out and arranging his gear for his shorter hike. On the 4th day, he almost left on that journey, though it was still pouring rain. Still, he was standing in the breezeway, fully loaded and ready to go. Pirate was in the breezeway with him, leaning against the wall and puffing on his pipe. Coop was weighing his options and finally consulted Pirate. Pirate, would you hike on a day like today? Pirate looked out one side of the breezeway, turned and looked out the other side and said, Nope, this will be a 0 day. Yeah? Pirate told him, I think you could use a couple more 0 days. Coop spent another 2 nights at the cabin and finally went through the breezeway smiling, just light enough in both weight and spirit. Along with the familiar faces that would come and go and always return to mountain crossings, our complicated family managed to stay together that year. Alpine and Jennifer did reach an agreement that they would not abandon each other. Alpine worked to patch the potholes in the far-flung road his life had travelled. He arranged to get the warrant for his arrest lifted after he cleared a few of his bank accounts, and he was able to work out a payment plan with the state of Pennsylvania. The divorce with Mariek was nearly complete, minus a few signatures on some paperwork. The meddling of Max, the pissed-off father-in-law, however devilish in its intent, was angelic in its effects in an indirect way. Max helped give Alpine his life back. The daughter in Norway remained a point of contention between Jennifer and Alpine, a difference in parental instincts. Jennifer couldn't understand why a man would not want to see his own daughter. Alpine didn't wish to disrupt the life of a girl who had never known him and might not even be aware that he still existed. But where Sergeant Ingram used to shoot at his disagreements and Jimmy used to run away from his, Alpine, the full-grown man, formed at last from the best of the soldier and the best of the boy, stayed with Jennifer, loved her, and found a love worth its disagreements. As for Billy, it was a sunny morning when he left us this time, though we knew he would be back. The air was a little crisper than it had been the day before, and the trees wore their boldest fall oranges, reds and yellows. Sky was already outside playing with our new puppy, Patches, when I stepped out of the house and into the breezeway. Billy's old red pack was leaning underneath the white blaze painted on the stone wall of the south entrance of the breezeway. He was about to leave, and if I didn't track him down, he wouldn't say goodbye. He never did. I found him down below the stairs outside the hostel. He and Pirate were sitting in two of the three rocking chairs. They left me the one in the middle. Sky ran down the stairs after me, leaving the puppy stranded at the top, and lay down at Billy's feet. We sat and drank coffee, admiring the trees. Pirate and Billy combed crumbs from their beards with their fingers. I asked Billy which direction it would be, east, west, north or south. North for a while, then west, I suppose. How about you, Pirate? Pirate turned over the bowl of his pipe, then struck it with his lighter to knock out the ash. Can't leave yet. Halloween's coming. It's my favourite holiday, you know. I smiled. The girls will be happy to hear that. Billy said, I left the flute in the shop, hanging on one of my old packs. You'll take care of it for me, won't you? Of course, but I thought you were going to learn to play it. I'm going to learn everything I can, he said. I told them I'd heard from Dartman, who had called to say that he and Rambling Man would be back our way in a few months. Farsang would have tried to make it back as well. Squirrel was going to hike the PCT. They nodded. Everybody knew this. I asked Pirate if he knew when Wee Willie and Fat Chap were coming back. I reckon whenever they get the urge to go bowling. Bowling? Asked Billy. I explained. Whenever Wee Willie or Fat Chap are coming to take Pirate off the mountain, they always tell him that they're going bowling. Sometimes Pirate could be bowling with these guys for a month. Good bowlers take their time, Pirate said. When the wind swung around and a single gust of warm air pushed past us from the south, following the trail to Maine, we stood up together. Pirate and Billy shook hands without any words of farewell. Their eyes sparkled briefly in communication, and then Pirate went in to cook breakfast. Billy and I climbed the stairs to the breezeway, where he took up his pack. It gave me joy to see him adjusting the straps, getting his hat right, taking his grip on his staff, turning his feet to the trail. He had a smile then that was just for himself, his private correspondence with the good world. I'd almost forgotten how young and how delighted he seemed on his departure days. Under the weight of his pack, he was lighter, gazing far away up the path. He was home. When he was ready, he gave me a wink and a grin, and then he started off. He would not look back again. Margie came out from the house and took my hand, and we watched Billy until he disappeared around the curve behind the old locust tree. I stood in the breezeway with my wife, and we inhaled the cool richness of autumn as we shared the trail with Billy a moment longer. Earl Schaefer and Grandma Gateway's trail, Bill Irwin and Nimblewell Noma's trail, and yes, Lorac and Hobbs trail, Pirate's trail and Minnesota Smith's, and the trail that belonged to my daughters and my beloved wife, who smiled sleepily and tugged my fingers to tell me it was time to go back inside. Our trail. I left it by the door.